Starting the broadcast now for the 1-minute announcement.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We will be starting the webinar Creating Custom Solutions with Geomatica in 1 minute. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the webinar today, Creating Custom Solutions with Geomatica. Lotus H&R Incorporated made use of the Geomatica Developer Platform in order to leverage the extensive processing capability available in Geomatica and created a more streamlined interface with agricultural processing and analytical tools for their operational team. Using rapid eye imagery and other commercially available images, the GeoAg processor allows the team to more easily derive consistent agricultural monitoring products such as multi-temporal mosaics, vegetation indices, and more. Today we'll be covering the following concepts: application background and needs, processing considerations for this agricultural monitoring system, measures of success, a demonstration of the application, and a description of the Geomatica Developer Platform. Following the presentation and demonstration, we will have some time for questions and answers, so please use the questions panel at any time during the presentation. I'd like to introduce our host today, Sean Malamed from PCI Geomatics. Sean is a skilled technical solution specialist at PCI Geomatics and an enthusiastic, experienced app developer. In addition to his work directly supporting sales and marketing opportunities, he was instrumental in the creation of the Geomatica Developer Platform and now leads the Developer Zone program after having taught himself Python programming in less than a year. We have a guest presenter today as well, Rubia Chen, president of Lotus H&R Incorporated, based in Taipei, Taiwan. She's been working with PCI Geomatics since 1995, and in 2016, Lotus H&R Inc. saw an important need to develop a custom agricultural processing application in order to create tools that could be used by staff to create consistent results. The app they created, which we will see today, simplifies user training and offers advanced functionality in Geomatica. Before we begin the presentation, just a few notes for our attendees. All your lines will be muted during the presentation, but during the course of the presentation, you can type any questions you have into the questions panel. We will be having a dedicated question and answer session following the presentation and demonstration. If you have any trouble hearing the audio or seeing the screen, send us a chat message or raise your hand in the interface. Before we begin the presentation, a quick question for our audience members. If you could tell us more about your interest in the topic today, whether it's application background, development, GeoAg specifically, or development. Once we get a majority of the votes, I'll pass the presentation to Mr. Sean Malamed, and we can begin the presentation. Looks like we have a lot of Geomatica users and those interested in developing custom tools today. Some specific interest in the GeoAg app, and some application developers. All right, looks like we have the majority of the votes in. Thank you very much. We'll have 2 more of these quick polls throughout the presentation, and then wrap things up with the question and answer session, as I mentioned. I'll pass the presentation now to Mr. Sean Malamed.
Thank you very much, Dave. Just 2 seconds while I take control of the screen. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take over and begin to tell you how this application became an app that was important to this particular customer in Taiwan, the challenges that the customer faced, as well as a little bit of a background about the app itself, and then I'll be leading into a demonstration. So to begin, I'd like to just provide a little bit of a background of the relationship between Lotus H&R Inc. and PCI Geomatics. PCI and Lotus H&R have been working together for actually a couple decades now. They have been a long-standing partner and a very important partner of ours, particularly within Taiwan. Lotus H&R is a leading geospatial provider of solutions as well as data as well as software within the Taiwan market and surrounding markets. They have been providing expert solutions and consulting services for many years now and are integral into the success of the remote sensing industry as well as our market share within that industry within Taiwan. Now, about a year ago, as David mentioned, Lotus H&R came to PCI and approached us with an idea, as they had a particular customer, Taiwan Agriculture Research Institute, which is a very important customer to theirs, that had a need to streamline their workflow, to help automate it, to help improve or simplify it so that they could deliver their products in a more timely and higher quality manner. So as a result of this, Lotus H&R approached PCI and our developer network to develop a custom application, completely custom, with a brand new GUI interface and a brand new and specific workflows tailored to solve this particular problem. And they did this for the Taiwan Agriculture Research Institute. Now, they are responsible for monitoring crops, predicting yields, and protecting farmlands. They provide an essential service within Taiwan to ensure that the agricultural industry is well maintained and that they can manage surpluses and potential deficits in a timely manner. So it's a very important institution within the Taiwan government so that they can provide this kind of service. So a little bit more about this background, about the specific requirements of the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute and the challenges that they face. So if you look here on your left, you can see a map of Taiwan that shows an approximation of all the cultivated lands within Taiwan. So you can see that majority of this area is along the coast, but it's quite a large area within this island. Now, they're responsible, every 20 days, they get new satellite imagery for the entire island, and they need to classify 4 specific plants out of 68 possible variations. Now, I understand classifying 4 doesn't seem very challenging, but when you think about the fact that you need to classify 4 out of 68 different crop types, and to do it accurately without false positives, this becomes actually a quite challenging task to do, and they need to do it quite accurately and very fast. So this was the challenge. This is the main challenge that they were facing. Now, the value of this kind of information is very important to helping them understand the expected yield for particular parts of the year for different types of important crops. So they can estimate the yield in metric tons based on the area that is used to cultivate that particular crop, and then they have special models where they can then figure out how much yield to expect based on that total coverage area. So they need to provide this information on a regular basis so that they can constantly monitor the amount of crops that are being built or that are being developed for certain types of species. Some of the challenges particular to Taiwan, so this is another concept, is even though that particular type of classification is general, there are some specifics to the Taiwan market and to some more temperate climate markets that add some additional challenges that need to be considered, such as the small parcel sizes. So when you compare the parcel sizes or the farmland, a particular farmland, between, say, a traditional commercial North America farm versus some in Taiwan, you can see there's a significant difference in size. They also grow many different types of crops, so they don't generally specialize. Farmers often change what they grow in their fields between seasons, so a field could be growing one type of crop at one point, and then all of a sudden they're growing a new type of crop, so it can vary quite a bit. They also have undefined growing season, unlike more moderate climates such as in Europe or Northern Asia or in North America, where you have 4 very strict seasons and you have a particular growing season. They, in Taiwan, can grow all throughout the year, so they don't have those much more strict seasons that make it easier to do these kinds of analysis. So if we look at one of the first problems that are challenges that they face is quite simply just the size of the lands and that they have so much variation within that. I mean, when you go to California, you go to one of these typical commercial farms, and you can see that one commercial farm in California could cover potentially hundreds of very small parcels or small farms, private farms within Taiwan. So that all could be classified separately. This is in California, this is all one type of crop. Whereas now you go to Taiwan, in that area, it could be potentially hundreds of different types of crops. So that is an additional challenge for this kind of process. Individual farms themselves change crops throughout the year. So in January, this is purely an example, but in January, you could have a signature representing cabbage for this field. But then in February, you can have a completely different signature representing, for example, broccoli. So it's unpredictable. You can't just basically say that this particular field grows one type of vegetable and they're going to grow that all the time. That's not how it works. They grow different, they can change throughout the year. So you can't just you can't just create a more generic model. You need these specific and repeatable classification results to be done very regularly. Another challenge that they face is that the cycle is highly variable and can change very, very quickly. So if we look at what this agricultural picture looks like in January 9th of 2016 and compare it to just 17 days later, you can clearly see a completely different agricultural picture is taking place. New farms are farther along in the phenology of their crop, and other farms have perhaps even changed or cultivated the crops that they were growing. So this adds to the challenge as well. And then finally, you have different kinds of crops grow at different rates. So you have, for example, soybean, where you might start to cultivate around 60 days, or you have pak choi, where you might start to cultivate around 20 days. So you can see the peak NDVI values here. So all these challenges make it very difficult to do this kind of work. And then to add to that layer of difficulty is the fast turnaround that they need this information, that they need to provide this information. So the goal of the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute is to help identify how much production to expect for individual crops at different times of the year. This helps the government officials identify if certain crops will have a surplus or a deficit. As a result, they can offer subsidies to farmers to try to convince them to grow crops in deficit instead of crops in surplus. So as a result of these agricultural challenges, the Taiwan Agriculture and Research Institute has laid out these particular goals and provided them to Lotus H&R. So they need to create accurate classification maps. The level of accuracy is very important. And equally important is to complete those classification analysis of the entire country within a few days of receiving the satellite imagery. And therein lies the main challenge that they were facing, was that strict and very short turnaround time that they need to provide this results. So as I said, they needed this application, custom app, or they needed a custom solution to help them with their pre-processing tasks, as they found that the pre-processing of the data, just the orthorectification, the calculation of some important derivative layers such as certain vegetation indices like NDVI, or even more advanced ones like the MCARI chlorophyll measure or the MTVI leaf area index. So these kinds of important, useful information that can be put into the classification, or it can be used for measuring health, or it can be used for change detection, was taking a long time to produce, and it was technically challenging to do. So they were having, as a result, it was very difficult to complete the classification results in the ideal time frame. So they needed to try to automate that initial task so they could focus purely on the classification results, get everything they need, and immediately jump to it. And also to save on costs. So as a result, Lotus H&R came to the PCI Developer Network and provided specifications for a custom thick client application, or an app, that would allow them, that would have very specific user-friendly workflows and controls and interface to allow them to do all that pre-processing so they could jump right into the classification. And as a result, we developed this GeoAg processor using the Geomatica Developer API, which is our API for doing custom development. So if we take a look at this, I can just open up, for example, the interface that we have here. So this here is the actual app that was built and provided to the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute. This here you can see is, it can have, we can change the particular logo. So actually in this case is the more generic Lotus H&R logo on there, because this app is also available for other customers through Lotus H&R. And of course, you know, customizations and little things that just sort of give you that custom feeling can be added as well. So this is the actual app that was provided to the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute. So in this app, which uses a state-of-the-art interface, we can see contained 4 specific workflows, the most important being the classification preparation. And this allows them to provide an input folder where it automatically discovers all the imagery in that folder and performs automatic orthorectification of the imagery, and it puts it to an output folder. Now, because they're working in a particular AOI, or area of interest, and that area of interest is not changing, it's the island of Taiwan all the time, that means we can default a lot of the settings, and they're working with particular sensors as well. So we don't need all those additional settings that can be confusing and that can have varying results in terms of the quality of the orthorectification. So we made it very simple. We just provided a switch. Do you want to orthorectify, yes or no? They can provide the output resolution that they want. They don't need all the projections and coordinate systems that is supported in Geomatica. They only use the local Taiwan projections and coordinate systems, or long lats. So these are the only ones that have been made available, because that's all they need. And then the option to calculate, do an atmospheric correction, and to calculate vegetation indices. Now, to further simplify this, we have an advanced panel where they can set up their DEM the first time that they open up the app, and the reference imagery, and all the other information, for example, which vegetation indices that they want to perform on a regular basis. And then these settings will always be set unless they change them. So every time they open up the app, those settings don't change, because they're going to be using the same DEM every time. They're going to be using the same reference imagery every time. So why ask them to provide that information every time they want to run this classification preparation workflow? It doesn't change unless it's being updated. So we shouldn't have to ask them every single time. So those are just some of the small things that we can do as a customization, as a custom app, to improve the user experience. If we go back, we can see that we had some other important ones, such as generating a base map. Oftentimes they want to overlay the results of their classification on a pretty, an aesthetically pleasing base map. So this thing does everything from orthorectify the imagery to the mosaicing steps in a very user-friendly way. Same thing with image alignment. Sometimes we have a situation, I'll bring this up, where the imagery is not specifically aligned, and there might be a slight pixel shift, and the image alignment can fix that. We also have a set of tools such as haze removal. So we get access to our state-of-the-art haze removal capabilities, where you can perform a variety of different tasks here. So I'll bring that up just to show you an example. Get 2 seconds while I bring it up. So they can produce these kinds of results where they have haze, and because Taiwan has it's a more temperate climate, they often have a lot of haze and cloud that they need to consider. So they can generate these kinds of results in a very user-friendly way. So that will also improve their classification. So we give them all these different tools and these access. So let me just show you how this tool works. So we're going to use the mosaicing workflow, because it's a very fast workflow. So we'll do it quite quickly. Let's bring up our folder here. So we have just 2 orthos just for a demonstration, so you can see it. And then we just have our output folders, where we're going to put our intermediary, our preview mosaic, or our mosaic preparation, and then our final mosaic will go into here. So just so that you're aware. So quite simply, you can browse with a very user-friendly interface, select desktop, and then you can very quickly get to your imagery. So we'll select the orthos. You point to the folder. You can see it like that. And then for the output, same thing. It's just put on the desktop. And this one requires a file name, so we'll just call it example.xml. Select that, and then quickly just click Run. So it'll launch a progress bar in a second. Oh, it's actually so fast that it goes through it right quickly. And this is one of the other advantages of our mosaicing technology, is the fact that when we generate the initial preview mosaic, it actually doesn't generate any pixels. It just calculates the statistics, and then we can review the results using a special dynamic loading mosaic tool. So now we can load that directly. So we don't need to go between environments. We just click Launch Mosaic Tool, and it's going to launch our mosaic editing tool. We can perform a simple analysis. You can see there's a slight variation. And now I can, for example, choose our dodging mechanism. Say I just want to choose this side. I can click that. I'm just going to choose single side. Now it improves the color balancing between these 2 images. I simply save the project. I could do other editing as well. Don't need to generate the preview. Close this result. Now you can see that once I launch that, it puts the XML file directly in here. So now I just need to browse for our output folder where we want our output mosaic to be written to. And I'll put it in mosaic. I'm going to select, and then I can generate the mosaic. And now it's bringing up our quick progress bar. It's very quick, so it'll probably be done quite fast. So it's not a very high resolution mosaic. Click Done, and now we have our final mosaic right here. So these are the kinds of things, just simplifying the workflow for the people, for the users, so that they have a more user-friendly way of performing this kind of analysis, or these kind of workflows. So once again, this particular application, the GeoAg processor, is available through Lotus H&R, and this can be provided exactly as is or with customizations. Perhaps these particular workflows are not specifically of need for your work, but maybe you could see advantage of having this kind of a concept, but maybe you just need a different workflow. So if that's an idea that's something that's interesting or something that would be useful, then this could be a very simple tool that would allow you to have that kind of capability. Or if you need something completely different, perhaps a web-based interface. These are all concepts, and we're going to go into that a little bit more after, but I'd like to um, move on, and I'd like to hear a little bit from Rubia, and David is going to ask Rubia a few questions a little bit to describe the process of creating this custom solution.
That's right. Thank you very much, Sean. Right, we have, as I said, a guest presenter, Ms. Rubia Chen, the president of Lotus H&R Incorporated, who essentially commissioned the application and worked closely with the client to develop the look and feel as well as the processing. So, Rubia, a couple of questions for you. What value does the GeoAg processor provide a user of remote sensing imagery that they wouldn't get with a full desktop app?
Good evening, everybody. I think GeoAg helps the customers to save time and manpower when doing the pre-processing of the images. This means that technical persons can spend more time on analyzing the data.
Oh, very good. And does H&R, does Lotus H&R Incorporated plan to offer more custom solutions in the future?
Oh yes, Lotus H&R has the skills and experiences to offer custom solutions for other applications, industry, and processing.
Great. And finally, why did you choose to have the GeoAg processor built with the Geomatica API?
Because Geomatica is a worldwide famous remote sensing software. It is powerful and stable. The team members are professional and supportive.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Chen. Now,
welcome.
before we thank you. Before we proceed with the end of the presentation, I've got another poll for everyone. After having seen the presentation on the GeoAg processor, just curious about how well it fits your needs. Is it something that looks useful exactly the way it is? Would it need some sort of customization, perhaps different algorithms, or another industry altogether? Or is it not something that you would see yourself using or requiring in your work? So we've got about 30% of the votes in so far. I'll leave this question open for another few seconds. That's good. About half of the votes are in so far, and it looks like everyone finds it useful in some way. I would say if it's not useful or if you're interested in particular customization, feel free to please expand on those answers in the, you can use the question panel, for instance, or the chat panel to provide some feedback about what would make this more useful for you. Okay, just another 10 seconds if we could get the remaining audience to vote, please, and then we'll move on with the presentation. Great. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Okay, Sean, back to you.
Thank you very much, David. So the first part of this presentation was to show off and discuss the particular problem and solution that was provided to the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute and to present the GeoAg app that was developed using the Geomatica API. Now I'd like to just very briefly, before we conclude this, this webinar, to talk a little bit about the developer network and program that we have currently in place and some new initiatives that we're working on, and also to describe how this process of creating this kind of a custom solution can be utilized, or how it can be repurposed for your own potential needs. So whether you are a developer and want to develop your own custom app, or whether you wish to create or have an app built for you by a developer. So just to start off, let's take a look at what the development process and the team that's behind you, the PCI support team and our network that can be there to support you to get the apps built that you have in mind. So it starts off usually with a discussion, a client discussion. So in this case, Lotus H&R and the Taiwan Agricultural Research Institute had a discussion where they were talking about some of the processing challenges that the client was facing, and some of the technical capabilities that would be very useful to them going forward, particularly geospatial technical capabilities that would help them get their work done. Now, obviously, it's also important to have a strong relationship. In this particular case, when you're trying to discuss the idea of building a custom solution, it's important to have that strong relationship and trust there. So, but once you have that, you have this sit down, you have the discussion, you gather the specs, and you start to present an idea to them. And at the beginning, it starts off very abstract with perhaps even just a simple draft or a simple drawing or a PowerPoint presentation of a mock-up of what this tool or this app could look like. So you document these requirements, and then with that information, you can work with us. We love helping with the ideas of showing what's feasible and like what's very challenging and what's not as challenging. Sometimes it's difficult from an outside people who don't program to know something that seems very simple can sometimes be challenging, and vice versa. Things that seem very challenging are sometimes actually relatively simple, and it's hard to know that. So with that, you can contact our developer network with the support of PCI and our API, and we support through this whole process. We can help you and coach you through this particular process of gathering the specs, doing the initial design, and sort of it's a bit of a back and forth where you come up with some concepts. They have some recommendations or differences in terms of what they're picturing. So they, you go back to the modify your mock-up, and then eventually, through enough iterative process discussion with the client, you eventually have sort of a spec sheet or a design document. And it doesn't need to be a very structured design document. Sometimes it's just a point form notes and drawings of like what the workflows will be and flow charts of like what the different workflows will do. So then at that point, either through PCI directly or with our developer network, where we have different partners who are powerful coders and familiar with our API and our platform, can help you get this actual product built. So this leads me into this a new initiative that PCI is going to be undertaking within this year, and we've already started to begin to do, is creating this developer network. So it's one thing to have resources available to users in order to do this kind of development, but what we're also trying to do here is create a network where PCI, generally we like to develop the core technology, the deep science, but sometimes a user needs a bit of a specific solution. So they need a chained workflow, or they need a specific, perhaps a web-based interface. And through that, our developer network, which could be made up of perhaps individual scripters. So these are developers who work within a particular organization. This might just be for their own personal use or use of their company. Or this can be expanded now, and this is where we're trying to get a bit more of an outreach to, is freelance developers, where this could be university students or postgrads or small businesses where they have an interest in developing products. And so one of the things we're going to be doing is creating an infrastructure, creating a network where we can connect a user who doesn't have the programming skills but has an idea, something that they want to get built, either for their own uses or to sell to a customer of theirs, or perhaps to go to market with, to sell to potentially many customers. And then they can find people that have the skills to build that particular app, perhaps using our API alone or using our API with other APIs. That's one of the advantages of our API, is you can connect it with other open source APIs or with ArcGIS as API, and you can build very powerful solutions that are not limited to just remote sensing, but it could be remote sensing plus GIS plus image processing plus a whole bunch of other capabilities, and provide that to the customer, whether it's yourself, whether it's a particular customer, or whether it's many customers in a market that you've identified. Now, when we break this down into who generally falls into our category, we can see scripting developers. Usually they're using it for personal use or with use within their own business. The freelance developers usually are interested more to providing it to a specific paying customer. So it might be company X has an idea of something they want built for themselves to help their day-to-day, but they don't have the skills in-house to build it themselves, and they can contact these freelance developers, organize a contract with them to have this particular vision of theirs built. Or the freelance developers, perhaps they have a vision where they see a potential market segment that could be open to them by building a solution, perhaps a cloud-based solution or web-based solution, and then they can go direct to the market themselves. And then we have this other category that we're looking at establishing, which is PCI certified developers. So these would be organizations that we have not only have passed certification courses so that we know that they have a knowledge of our API and strong programming knowledge, but these would also be organizations or individuals that we have a strong working relationship with. So there's a business trust there as well. And so while they can do all the other 4 categories, they would also be able to develop specifically for us. So sometimes we go to clients and we find that they want a specific workflow, or they want a specific solution that, our technology can do it, but maybe it needs to be designed and molded in a certain way to meet their needs. So that could be potential work for these certified developers to do custom work for us or our partner network. We have a very extensive partner network that includes hundreds of companies worldwide that they could also be included in that. So these are some of the concepts that we're looking at unveiling and establishing within the year to expand our developer platform and our developer program. So if you have any information, we're very early in the onset of this. It's an exciting new initiative that I will be leading this year. And if you want any information about this, or if you have any suggestions, or you have an interest to potentially be a part of this network as a developer or as a community or someone who's interested in having a product built for them, please contact me at malamed@PCIGeomatics.com. So that leads us to our third poll question, which is more specifically about both the developer tools and the GeoAg processor. So with that, I'll bring it back to Dave.
Thank you very much, Sean. Right, so audience, thank you for your attendance so far. Now that you've seen the GeoAg processor specifically and the Geomatica developer tools sections of the presentation, I'm curious about where you see yourself in terms of the options here. Are you here to learn more about the GeoAg in particular? You'd like to know more about that, perhaps the developer tools. Maybe you're developing your own custom application. You'd like to learn more about that, or seeking someone, a freelance developer, to build an application for you. You're a customer who has a need for such an app. Or perhaps neither the app nor the developer tool is useful for you. But in any case, any further information you'd like to share about what it is you're looking for, you can put in the chat window to me, any of the organizers, or to in the questions panel. And we do have that question and answer session coming up in just a moment, so you can still use that panel. We're still collecting questions. Okay, good response. I'll just give it another few seconds. Looks like we've got about 2/3 of the votes here, and pretty evenly split between those who are interested in the GeoAg processor specifically, those looking for Geomatica information, developer information, and those who are interested in developing custom applications. Great. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll in just a few seconds. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a couple more slides from Sean, and then I do have a couple of questions to ask him.
Okay, so as mentioned, we are starting this initiative this year in terms of creating this developer network. But with that being said, we do have a lot of very useful technical resources for people who are interested to learning more about our API. Everything from people who have never programmed before with our Getting Started tutorial or blog to some wide range of tutorials for different skills and different parts of our API, from same thing from beginners all the way to intermediate to some advanced techniques. And then we have a variety of we have a forum, videos, and a variety of access. So to access this, just go to dev.pcigeomatics.com, and then you can click on the developer zone link, or you can just put in the developer-zone reference there. So that is if you want to currently review what and begin to learn how to program with our API. Now, in particular with the GeoAg offer, so if you want this app as is, or perhaps with customizations with a particular custom workflow that is not currently in there, contact Rubia Chen at Lotus H&R Inc. For sales and inquiries about this particular app. As mentioned, this was built by the PCI Developer Network, but because it's her project, or because it's the Lotus H&R Inc. project, it's their IP. So this is their product that they can then go out and sell. And so you can also think about that if you have your own concepts that you want built for your own to go to market. You can think about the developer network in that way as well. So with that, we'll go to our Q&A session where I believe Dave has already been accumulating some questions, and feel free to ask additional questions should you have them.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, we do have just a couple of questions from this session, actually. It's similar to the ones we saw from our previous session that we ran last night for our customers in Asia. So one question is the Geomatica Developer Platform only for agricultural applications?
No, it's Geomatica API or Developer Platform gives you access to over 550 different image processing, remote sensing, and photogrammetry functions, as well as hundreds more classes and deeper level API where you can access the individual pixels and build custom models and access metadata and everything. So it really gives you access to our entire platform, so you can build apps for a variety of different vertical markets.
Great. Thank you, Sean. And another question, how is the GUI built, the graphical user interface? Is that part of the developer platform?
The GUI that we built here is, I'll just bring it up one more time. So this GUI is actually built using an open source library called Kiwi. It's quite a powerful and user-friendly library in order to build graphical interfaces using a very modern interface style. And so one of the advantages of our API being in Python is it allows you to take advantage of these other APIs for more specific capabilities such as GUI development. So with that, this Kiwi is a completely Python-based GUI environment or GUI library. So this is all done with Python, and you can, what we are planning to do shortly is to create some tutorials to show you how to take advantage of Kiwi with our API, so that you can build a very simple interface and then expand on that, of course. And there's a lot more additional capabilities that we did not take advantage here within Kiwi. It's a very extensive library, and it can be used for building phone apps or tablet apps, and also there's a variety of APIs that are Pythonic for developing web-based applications as well.
So we could incorporate any number of third-party functions from these external libraries, just bring those into the app?
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So that's all the questions that we had for today. I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of PCI Geomatics and on behalf of Lotus H&R Incorporated. Thank you for your attendance today. We will have a recording of this webinar distributed to you via the email address you used for your registration. Look for that in the next few days. If you do have any questions that you think of afterwards, please feel free to contact us. Again, at the contact information you use for registration, email address is fine. Just contact PCI Geomatics directly if you'd like. We'll make sure the question gets to the right person and answered promptly for you. Right, so a final thank you to our presenters, Mr. Sean Malamed and Ms. Rubia Chen. And on behalf of us doing the presentation, thank you all for attending.